Welcome back to the classroom. My name is Mr. Wong, and today we're going to be looking at the chemical reactions found in life. So to start ourselves off, let's look at the lesson intention. We want to explore various types of chemical reactions that occur in real-world experiences. Our success criteria is to outline the chemical reaction and explain its importance in the real world. To start ourselves off, we're going to look at photosynthesis and cellular respiration. You probably know photosynthesis as the process in which plants convert energy or carbon dioxide and water into energy. And cellular respiration is using oxygen and sugar to produce carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so photosynthesis is a process where sugars, usually in the case of glucose. So this is the formula for glucose. So I'll write that down. Here we have glucose, or at least this is the chemical formula for glucose. So this is glucose. And glucose is just a type of sugar. So we have a green pigment in many green plants called chlorophyll, which absorbs mostly blue and red light and acts as a catalyst for the reaction. So in this reaction we have here, you can see I wrote sunlight on top of the reaction arrow. This is a catalyst. Without this catalyst, the process of photosynthesis wouldn't occur, which is why we say that plants need sunlight in order to grow. If there's no sunlight, they can't actually convert the carbon dioxide and water into sugars and oxygen. You can see this is the change in enthalpy, and you can see that this value is positive. The positive implies that energy is absorbed by the reaction, which makes sense because we said sunlight is used as the catalyst to allow for this reaction to occur. So what that means is this is an endothermic reaction. Moving along, let's actually look at how carbon dioxide is absorbed in photosynthesis. So plants have what we call a stomata. It provides an entry point for carbon dioxide to enter, and also the same location where once it produces water vapor, exits through this gap here. Under hot weather conditions, the stomata will close, as you can see here. The reasoning is to prevent dehydration from too much water loss in those high temperature conditions. Once the carbon dioxide goes through, it will then react with the chlorophyll, and then that's where we get the photosynthesis process going. The next type of process we can look at is cellular respiration. Now this is coming from the mitochondria in your cells, and it's an aerobic process. Aerobic just means it uses oxygen. Okay. This occurs in both plants and animal cells. Energy stored in the chemical bonds of glucose, again, this is the formula for glucose, will react with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. This energy is known as ATP, the adenosine trisulfate, so that's the energy there. This is an exothermic reaction. And this is basically the reaction that governs your ability to release oxygen or to release carbon dioxide after breathing in oxygen. If you compare the two equations, cellular respiration and photosynthesis, you can actually see that the products and reactants are essentially flipped on both sides. So the reactants used by our cells to take in oxygen to produce carbon dioxide, The oxygen comes from the production of oxygen from photosynthesis, and through us breathing out carbon dioxide, we actually feed fuel for plants to grow. So in a way you can say we're sort of humans, plants, and other plants are growing each other at the same time. The only difference is with cellular respiration, it doesn't need a catalyst to allow this reaction to occur, whilst photosynthesis needs light or the color of red and blue, those kind of light sources to make it react. Alright, so let's look at other forms of respiration. And the most common one that we can look at is through exercise. When you exercise, you tend to breathe a lot harder because your oxygen supply needs to be increased. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. What actually happens when you're undergoing strenuous exercise is your cells don't always have the necessary amount of oxygen for aerobic respiration. So under these kind of conditions, your body will produce energy anaerobically. So producing energy through a lack of oxygen supply in your body, in your cells. In this process, a type of acid called lactic acid is produced as a waste product. So when you get muscle soreness after exercising for a long period of time, that is the buildup of the lactic acid. It does help you produce energy, but as a side note, you get a bit of muscle soreness from over-exercising. The next form of, I guess, anaerobic respiration is through a process known as fermentation. And this is actually the same process we use to produce alcohol. So fermentation is a process that throughout human history we've used quite a lot. It is an anaerobic respiration. So what that means is it does not need oxygen. Oxygen not required. What we have is glucose, so we have sugar, and we allow it to break down or fermentate with an additional of yeast. So yeast is the catalyst in this reaction here. As you can see, this is a decomposition reaction. It produces a chemical known as ethanol, and this is a type of alcohol. Not as in the type of brand of alcohol, but just a particular chain of alcohol. Ethanol, this eth represents the 2 carbons here. So ethanol represents a 2 carbon chain alcohol. It also produces carbon dioxide, which if you actually have a look at this little animation here, you can see little fizzy bubbles producing here. That's all from the carbon dioxide that's being produced. And then you get production of energy. For those who didn't know, the actual energy conversions we get from the actual chemical to the breaking up, this energy is caused by the breaking of bonds. So energy that's released after chemical bonds are broken. What's another interesting factor is, during these chemical reactions, there will be a slight difference in the mass, a very, very small fraction difference between the mass of here and the 2 masses here. And the way we actually explain why there's a slight difference can be traced back to Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. Just thought that was a little interesting info that I'll just leave there. Okay. So let's look at other types of reactions that occur, in our real world experiences. One of them is the gastric acid. This is a common name for the acid that's inside your stomach. Now your stomach acid or gastric acid is made up of mostly hydrochloric acid, some potassium chloride and sodium chloride. It has a pH of 1.4 to 3.5, so it's very acidic. It's going to release a lot of hydrogen ions. The function of your stomach acid is to reduce the number of bacteria in the food that you've eaten. It dissolves any leftover nutrients and it helps digest proteins. You might also see images like this. The actual stomach muscles are designed to withhold the highly acidic acid inside your stomach, and so that it doesn't pour out into other parts of your body. Your esophagus, which is your food pipe, will place the food through, and then it comes down and it gets dissolved by this stomach acid. Once it's been broken apart, it goes through your small intestine, where the base solution of your stomach acid will break down any fats. Now, one of the things I want to quickly highlight is this little ring muscle here, the sphincter. This has an important function. This is designed, particularly when your food goes into your stomach acid, the acid will begin to rise up, and the ring muscle that you have here is there to prevent the acid from rising too high and going back into your esophagus. There are occasions where this might happen, and you might register that as heartburn. Okay, so another name we call heartburn is acid reflux. Now, first pointer is acid reflux is just one reason of cause for heartburn. It's not the only reason. And like we said, it occurs because the ring muscle can't contain the stomach acid from staying within inside the stomach. There are ways to sort out heartburn, and might I also add that heartburn can be hereditary, or it could be from overeating. The way we can actually relieve heartburns is using things called antacids. Antacids are weak bases, usually made of aluminium hydroxide. And the idea is to use the weak antacids to neutralize your stomach acid. So that relieves the heartburn, and that allows for the acid to sort of settle down inside your body. So those were all the different types, or just the many types of chemical reactions that can occur in our everyday world experiences. What we will continue, or what we'll finish off this lesson with, is just by filling this table. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of processes, and we want to work out if they are a chemical change and why we think that. So the first one is carbohydrates being digested in the stomach. This is a chemical change. The reason why it's a chemical change is because we're dissolving the carbohydrates and releasing it into, carbon dioxide, energy. So we do get a new formation of products, right? So new chemicals are formed. By reacting with our stomach acid. Evaporation from lakes and rivers, that is a physical process or physical change. If we evaporate water, so from liquid water to water vapor, it's still water, they're just more spread out. Living cells respiring, causing carbon dioxide to be released, that is a chemical change. Again, the reason why it is a chemical change, because we actually converted glucose plus oxygen into CO2 and water. Plants absorbing nutrients and carbon from the soil. Alright, so if this is just an absorption, so they're just bringing it in to their system, It is a physical change, right? They're just taking in the nutrients into their system. Now, when they react with the carbon to form other molecules, then that process would be a chemical change. But if we're just talking about absorbing nutrients, that is a physical change. A bushfire releases ash and smoke, and CO2 is released into the environment. This is a chemical change. The reason why it's a chemical change is because bushfire burning, you need a fuel source, okay, and that fuel source is certainly not carbon dioxide. So the fuel source will react with the oxygen, and that produces carbon dioxide. So that is a chemical change because atoms have been rearranged. We'll use react. Okay, so that concludes our lesson for today about the chemical reactions we find in real-world experiences. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and you have a better understanding of all the different types of reactions that might occur in real life. Give this video a like to support other videos to come out. Anyhow, take care and have a good one.